If this is your first time on skate skis, or maybe you've been out skiing a couple times, but you're looking to really hone in on the techniques and know what the names of different things are and know what you're doing and be able to put a movement to a name to a movement that you've done before. So there's 3 or 4 main things we'll talk about today. So we'll talk about V1, we'll talk about open field, and we'll talk about V2. And then we'll probably also just talk about general skating, what's going on with your lower body, right? Or what we might call like a power skate or just a no poles skate. So there's a couple things to consider with each form, right? So there is when you're using it and why you're using it, and then what it looks like and how your body has to move and what the timing of all these things are. So the things that go into skate skiing would be balance, timing, and coordination. And so then the last consideration would be just what's happening with your lower body and your upper body. So with your lower body, right, it's the same in every single skate motion with very slight modifications. But in general, we are pushing from each ski, we're pushing side to side. We're not pushing backwards like a hockey skate or a figure skate. We're pushing our body side to side. And a good way to think about that is if our body moved in a U pattern. So your head, your chest, your hips, your knee. So say everything's loaded over one ski. It's all about getting your weight all the way over each ski so that you can have that flat ski. Because if our weight's in the middle, our knees are gonna bend in and our skis are gonna ride on that inner edge, which is slow. It's gonna slow us down. We wanna be riding on a flat ski, and to do that, we wanna get our nose, our knee, and our toe in a straight line. And then we're pushing sideways out to the other ski, where then we're gonna have our nose, our knee, and our toe in that straight line, okay? With our body always still pointing down trail. So like I said, that U pattern is what I like to think of. So we're up here tall. So that's, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 points of contact, right? So there's 4 points of stoppage I'm gonna talk about, right? Where we go up, down, over, and up. So up here, you load down onto your ski, you push straight across to your other ski, and then you pop back up. And then you just reverse that. You go across, down, over, up, down, over, up. So that's that U pattern I'm talking about. And that helps us push out on our ski to the other ski, and then glide out on it, pull, push out on the other ski, glide out. All right? So that's that general U pattern on the lower side of your body. And the upper side of your body is just a different type of double pole, which any of you who have classic skied in the past might be familiar with. And a double pole would just be a crunching of the abs, pushing with both poles. Your hands, depending on how fast you're moving, are either going to your hips, a little past your hips. They're maybe stopping here, about halfway to your hips. But the general double pole is always what's happening. Every time you pull, your knees bend, your ankles bend, they recover, and your hips come forward as you come through. So double pull, recover, hips come forward, back down. We're not bending at the waist, we're bending at the knees so that we can engage our core. If we're bending at the waist, our core isn't getting used. If we're bending at the knees, we can crunch our abs down. So first of all, V1. V1 we're using when we're going up hills. It's sort of our slow, powerful gear. If you're thinking about on a bike and you have different gears, when you start going up a hill, you have to shift into a slower gear that allows you to get more power output for a different type of movement. So a V1, you're thinking you're going up a hill, right? And so you're planting both your poles in one foot at the same time, and then you're recovering by pushing on your other foot, and then you're planting both your poles in your foot, planting your poles. So it's like a 3-in-1 motion. So that's the timing part, 3 and 1, 3 and 1. You're pushing hard with your legs at the same time, but you also have an offset pole pattern where one pole is a little in front of that foot, and one pole is sort of a little like in the middle of your foot, and that pole is just angled a little bit outwards, okay? Now when we're skate skiing, we're always double poling, so you're still using your arms, but instead of planting your poles directly in the middle, they're offset just a tad. Now when it comes to open fielding and V2, they're very similar. The main difference being that V2 is on both sides, whereas open field, you're only poling on one side, so it's kind of a half of a V2. You'll use an open field when you're moving so quickly that your poles can't keep up. So open field is actually is a technique you wouldn't be using very often unless your balance hasn't quite yet developed, or you are, like I said, you're moving down a slight downhill, or you're moving so quickly it's a very icy day that your poles cannot keep up with your legs. So V2 then would be when you're poling in between each push off of your legs. Okay, so when we saw V1, we were planting at the same time as our ski. Now this is you're poling and then planting your foot, recovering your hands, poling and then planting your foot, recovering your hands. So that's a V2 when you're poling on both sides. And then an open field would be the same thing, but instead of poling on both sides, you're poling in between your skis here, and then you leave your hands back, and as you push your feet back to the other spot, you're recovering your hands, and then pushing. Recover your hands, pull, recover hands, pull. So that's open field versus a V2 where you're poling every time in between each foot. Okay, so what we talked about when it comes to being a beginner skate skier is what the three different main techniques are: V1, open field, and V2. We talked about when to use those different techniques, and we also talked about what we're doing with our lower body and our upper body and how those things work together via timing, coordination, balance, right? And how many things we have to think about when we're learning how to ski.